it is evident this is not really much of a plan at all. It's chaos. We're going to talk about the Chaos Reds on today's bonus edition of the Locked On Reds podcast.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. I am your host, Stephen Offenbaker, alongside Jeff Carr, and we are Reds fans with a passion for baseball, with a passion for the Cincinnati Reds, and we are taking that passion and turning it into information for you. On today's bonus episode of the Locked On Reds podcast, Jeff and I are going to break down a few of the moves over the last 48 hours that have really left most of Reds country scratching their head, namely the trading of Amir Garrett for a pitcher that brings back $7.5 million in salary for a team that was not wanting to spend money, and then the signing of a super utility, maybe, for $4.5 million. We're going to get into all of that right now, Jeff. And I thought I knew the direction that this team was going. And then your best friend, Nick Krall, comes out and says, no, we are building a playoff contending team. And then they go spend millions of dollars. And now I have no idea what's happening. Help me.
Well, and the weirdest part about that is that he's like, yeah, we got under budget, and so we spent some money to come up the budget. Okay. The biggest question I have about the Mike Minor trade is, why didn't they just keep Wade Miley? I mean, it's very evident that before the lockout, there was a direction. Now, after the lockout, there's now a direction. And then they made a couple of trades and the direction, and it's all crisscross and all this other stuff. I feel like the person running this team is the Joker from, like, The Dark Knight. Like, I'm just chasing cars. I don't even know what to do if I got one. It's chaos, man. It's chaos.
Steve Mancuso and Matt Wilkes over at Reds Content Plus have been floating a theory that I think maybe bears some merit in this situation. And what those guys over there were saying, Jeff, is that the reins have been handed off to Phil Castellini. And when you take what they're saying into consideration with the article that John Fay, or the post that John Fay put on Facebook about the chronological history about how Bob Castellini has operated, all of that kind of checks out. It starts to add that there's a different person calling the shots pre-lockout and post-lockout. I think maybe there is some truth to that, because this really feels like the decision on Wade Miley was made by a person that just wanted to cut payroll and didn't want to spend money. And then the decision to trade for Minor was made by somebody else that felt like the budgetary goals had been met and that they wanted to at least be able to do a little PR spin and give the illusion of trying. And I think that I agree that maybe Mr. Phil Castellini has really asserted himself into this building of the team. And maybe it's why suddenly Nick Krall is running I guess we're calling it the Tampa Bay model, but it seems like that's the direction we're moving.
Right. And to be honest with you, I liked the Donovan Solano signing. He is the super utility player that you kind of mentioned. He's mostly played at second base. He's obviously not going to get a whole lot of time there except on off days for Jonathan India. But what he does well is he mashes left-handed pitching. He's a right-handed bat that mashes lefties, something that the Reds have few and far between. And let's be honest, Eugenio Suárez, we were hoping he was going to bounce back and be that guy, but we weren't really sure. But all told, with the Mike Minor trade, in and of itself in a vacuum, this isn't a terrible deal. We're talking about Amir Garrett, who you can kind of explain away the fact that, yeah, the Reds probably really didn't think he was ever going to bounce back to anything that they had expected him to be about 2 or 3 years ago. And Mike Minor, okay, maybe he could bounce back. He's got some nice peripherals that say that he was getting a little bit unlucky these past few years, although you don't love the strikeout ratios and things like that. But it's added on to everything else. The biggest question mark with all of this is, why were the Reds managing their payroll in a way that, okay, the Winker and Suárez deal, as Nick Krall said, got us under budget, And so we're going to go back to spending money now. We're keeping Castillo and Malley. We're not going to be rebuilding. We're competing for a playoff spot. Like, okay, Steve, is this a playoff team? Because I don't think so.
It's not, and it's funny because he said that with a straight face. And I want to tell you that we also included audio on one of our episodes just a few days ago with Nick Krall saying that the trade of Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suárez was not about the budget. But he seemingly contradicted himself and said that it was about the budget. Now that they were under budget, they could do some things. I'll tell you this, Jeff. Looking at the signing of Solano, I like that signing for all of the reasons that you said. I like that we finally have somebody that can maybe hit a left-handed pitcher. David Bell and Nick Krall have already said that for the remainder of the time that they're in spring training, Solano is going to take reps at second base, at shortstop, at third base, and in the outfield, which I think is a key there because this team is struggling to find people to play in the outfield. So I think basically we're at a point where everybody goes and lines up in left field and right field. And if you look like you belong, you're now an outfielder. We're going to do it Little League style.
My phone. No, okay, it wasn't. My phone buzzed. I thought maybe it was Nick Krall asking me to come play the outfield, but no, that's a telemarketer. Anyway, I love Solano. Buck Farmer is an interesting one to me, and I thought it was kind of funny how this news got broke because I'm pretty sure, I don't know if C. Trent was the first one, but C. Trent's was the first tweet that I saw that said, oh, hey, we're in the clubhouse, and there's a locker that's marked for Solano and for Buck Farmer, and we haven't had any announcements as to whether or not they've been signed, but that seemed pretty obvious at that point that they had been signed. And there were some national sports media types that were happy about the deal for the Reds and actually sort of surprised that they got Donovan Solano for what they got him for. Also, really cool to note, Ben Kaspick of Locked On Giants has said the nickname for Donovan Solano is Donnie Barrels. I'm all in on that. Give me a lot of that.
For sure.
But when it comes to Buck Farmer, I don't know. The stats are not good. He's not been a very good pitcher these last few years, so we'll take that with what she is. It's a minor league signing. This kind of looks like a Heath Hembry deal or something like that. So whatever the Reds get out of him is extra.
Right. Jeff, it just could be that with this spring training being hastily assembled the way that it is, they just felt like they needed to get a few more arms in here to get hitters look at pitching. And I'm okay with that. Is he going to make the bullpen? Is he going to be on this team? I think it's a long shot, honestly. I am concerned about this move to collect some starting pitchers. First with the trade for Minor, and then with the news circulating that the Reds may be in talks with Johnny Cueto on a potential Cincinnati return. Those two things give me pause only in as much as I'm looking at I'm looking for conspiracies everywhere right now, Jeff, with this front office. And I'm concerned that maybe a decision has been made to delay the start of Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo's service time clock. Now, I know we don't do that anymore. We just worked it out, right? That's not a thing that we do. But I wonder if they may delay the debuts of both of those pitchers. And by collecting some more starting pitchers, it's something they could feasibly do now.
Steve, I already wasn't really sure about this trade. And if that is actually the move, if that is what the Reds are really doing, they're saying we're going to get Mike Minor, we're going to go get Johnny Cueto, which, by the way, there's two schools of thought real quick on Johnny Cueto for me. Number one, I love Johnny Cueto. He's one of my favorite Reds ever. I would love to see him in a Reds uniform again.
Me too.
I would be really happy when he signed. I'll also have this other thought in my brain of, great, now we won't get Green or Lodolo, and I don't like that. Like, those two guys need to be in the rotation, and I know we're not going to get 200 innings out of them, but you are signing innings eaters. You're trading for innings eaters that, okay, how many innings are Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green actually going to get then? I think that it's a very strange move, and I said this at the outset of today's emergency bonus podcast, chaos reigns. I feel like Nick Krall's sitting at his desk right now, and he's got this little voice over here that's telling him to cut money, and this little voice over here that says the fans want you to win, so do whatever you can to win, and they're both screaming at him, and so he's just making all of these moves, and he's like a fantasy baseball player who just started playing the game, and he's like, okay, I got to trade this guy, but I got to get this guy, but I got to trade this guy, and I don't know. I watched an interview with Jesse Winker on MLB Network today, ducked out in Mariners gear, and I just I was sick to my stomach.
Right. You know, the sad part is that both of Nick Kral's voices have a last name of Castellini. That's really the tragic part of this whole thing, Jeff. It really is. And as far as the pitching goes, I agree with you. I think there are some creative ways that the Reds can get these youngsters major league experience while protecting their arms. I have a proposal that I'm going to pitch on Monday's episode. How is that for a tease? I'll be ready to present that on our Monday full episode so that I have enough time to fit it all in.
I love it, Steve. I tell you what, we're going to end this emergency. Thank you so much for jumping on. You're on the road. I know you are, and appreciate you jumping on to talk about everything that's going on. The Reds just seemingly don't want to stop making news, which is nice. We have lots to talk about because of that, but it's chaos, man. It's chaos. Now, thank you, everybody, for watching, for listening. Go check out the St. Patty's Day episode we had with Cam Miller if you haven't already watched or listened to that. Had a lot of fun talking to him about green uniforms, about some great former Reds, Andy Leonard, Tony Mullane, Irish-born Reds. And we've got a lot of great stuff coming for you next week. Actually, right now, though, I do want to throw it. I had an interview earlier this week with Lindsay Crosby from Locked On MLB Prospects. We talked about the trade with Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suárez and what the Reds got back. This is more of looking at the talent that was received, and we're not going to go too crazy on, my negative feelings toward the trade, but this is going to kind of help inform everybody about who's coming to the Reds from the Mariners. Thanks, everybody, for watching, for listening. Make sure that you are subscribed right here on YouTube. We've got so much great stuff coming for you as the season gets going. We've got our first game tomorrow. We'll be talking a lot about that on Monday and so much more extra content coming. Make sure you're subscribed. You're following us on your favorite podcasting apps. But for Steve and myself, we are always what?
We are Locked On Reds every single day. And here is a great conversation between Jeff and Lindsay Crosby. We'll see you next time.
When you saw this return for Matt Olson, how did it make you feel about the two Cincinnati trades that they've made so far this season and the return that you got for your players?
Sick to my stomach, Lindsay. I did my level best, and I still believe I like Chase Petty, and we're going to get into him in a little bit, but I still believe that there is something to like about that trade. I thought they could have gotten more. I thought it was an all right trade. I didn't think it was a terrible trade, but I thought they could have done better with that. And then when you look at the Mariners deal, sending Jesse Winker, who's only going to be making about $3.5 million after arbitration this year, and Eugenio Suárez, who, say what you will, his contract's still pretty favorable, especially if he plays a lot more like September Suárez than the rest of last year, then overall, I think that they could have gotten more out of that one as well. So I look at the deal that the A's did, and I definitely give the win to them. Comparatively, their front office looks a lot smarter with the deal that they made and the deal that they made with Chris Bassett as well.
Yeah, and it's something where, I like the guys that Cincinnati got, but part of me felt that you could have either gotten more quantity or you could have gotten a second top, higher level prospect in these deals. Williamson's a good pitcher. Petty's a good pitcher, but especially with Petty, you have question marks. And so it kind of feels like there should have been another piece, especially to the Petty trade. There should have been another piece in there. Where do you want to start? You want to start with the Suárez-Winker deal? Do you want to start with the Sonny Gray deal?
Let's go with Suárez and Winker because I at least know a little bit about Williamson. I know how highly touted he is. I've heard of Justin Dunn and Jake Fraley. And when I look at this deal, I feel as though objectively there's going to be a day, maybe a week from now, maybe 2 weeks from now, when I'm actually like, all right, let's see what happens in the future because of this deal. It's just right now I'm very emotional and I'm very pissed off about it.
And I kind of think that's valid. Okay, so let me back up. I like Brandon Williamson. Okay, so Brandon Williamson right now probably slots in as your number 4 prospect in the system. Okay. He's got really good stuff. I think the issue there with Williamson is it's just an extremely small sample size. So 2 years at junior college, was drafted in the 36th round in 2018 because they still had 36 rounds back then. Went to TCU rather than signing. Went ahead, got picked in the second round a year later, and full season debut in 2021. So you've only seen one season of him. Now he's a big lefty, 6'6". You don't see a lot of lefty pitchers that have power, but I mean, he can get up to 97 on the fastball. He sits 94 or so. And it's something that the pitch has a lot of late life to it, and really, I think, plays up off of its speed. So it feels like it's even faster than it is when it comes in. But as much as I like the fastball, the big thing to me, and people who listen to my show know that I'm a sucker for a lefty with a great curveball. And he has one of the better curveballs in minor league baseball. It's one of those, if you picture, and I'm not doing a player comparison because I'm big about not doing player comparisons, but if you picture the Clayton Kershaw curveball, that big action to it, that big body to it, that's what this curveball looks like. A big top to bottom curveball. Really tight spin, a lot of movement on it. And so, I mean, it's probably close to plus, not just a plus pitch. One of the best curveballs in minor league baseball. Absolutely love it. I think that he's going to be a great, I mean, probably number 3 at least, if not better. And the thing here is we just need a little bit more innings from him. We just need to see a little bit more to make sure that what we've seen so far from college, from junior college, from TCU, and then his 1 year in the minors is legit. But I think he can be a midseason call-up, and I think he can contribute at a high level to this ball club sooner rather than later.
That's huge, and especially you talking about pitching from the left side, because especially for me, knowing what the lineup is against southpaws, if you can't beat him, join him. Just go get a bunch of left-handed pitchers. But I love the idea of him being a big lefty, too, having him on the mound. I am very much excited about the idea of seeing a middle-of-the-rotation guy, because now I'm envisioning a world where in a couple of years you've got Hunter Green at the top, you've got Nick Lodolo number 2, you've got Williamson number 3, and you've got Gutierrez number 4, and maybe Graham Ashcraft number 5. That's a pretty solid rotation if they hit their potential.
That's a pretty solid rotation. And the great thing that I love about this deal, more so than anything else, is Williamson and Lodolo played together in college, and they are reunited, and it feels so good. I absolutely love to see them back together. But no, like, this is a rotation that top to bottom has a lot of guys that have a lot of loud, elite pitches. And when you're bringing a pitcher up from the farm, if you're going to take the risk of bringing on a high school guy or bringing on a college guy and develop him internally, he needs to be a guy that has some sort of exceptionally loud, amazing tool. And that's what Williamson is. And I think that's kind of the philosophy behind getting Petty as well, is just finding somebody who has an elite tool, in this case, the fastball, and seeing, can we build a pitcher around this absolutely elite tool? What was the reaction when you saw, okay, we're shipping out a major league player and we're getting back this one prospect in return, and he's a low A guy and he's a high schooler? Like, what was the reaction there?
I think vitriol would be the word. There were a lot of folks that were like, yo, dude just went to prom 3 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden we're trading Sonny Gray for him? Like, come on. And then I saw the plus fastball. I saw the plus curve or slider with the chance to be a plus slider based on Fangraphs scouting representation of him. And then he's got command issues, but then I'm like, he's 18. What 18-year-old has perfect command? Like, I think that that's something that is kind of okay, at least when you're talking about his profile. And I think that if I'm ranking the 4 players that they've got back in these 2 deals, he's probably number 2 for me, just based on what I've read.
Yeah, and you're right that as a young guy, obviously a little bit more risk there. But I think the reason why I'm okay with this trade, despite it being an established big league pitcher in Sonny Gray, is the fact that a lot of what Petty's issues are when it comes to pitching and control are not so much inherent issues with his control. It's just mechanics. So are you familiar with the concept of shaping a pitch and like the shape of a pitch? Okay. So in essence, what we're talking about is when say you throw a fastball. All right, you're throwing a 4-seam fastball. what does that fastball look like to the hitter? Does it move like a fastball, like a four-seam fastball normally does? And Petty has not only great velocity. I mean, he hit 100 in high school. It's a very small group, like one hand you can count guys who can do that. But when he maintains the proper arm slot, then the shape of the pitch and what the pitch does is unlike a lot of four-seam fastballs. And so it makes it harder to hit. And even if he didn't have the velo, it would still be a really good pitch. When you combine the shape with the velo, that's what makes it a plus pitch. Same thing with the slider. The slider has really sharp bite at the very end of the slider when he maintains the proper arm slot. And when he loses that arm slot and he drops down a bit to kind of a 3/4 arm slot, that's when the slider starts taking that lazy sweep across the plate and getting crushed. And so his issues aren't I can't control the pitch. His issues are I just have to maintain that proper slot at all times. And so I feel like it's an issue that can be corrected. It can be worked on. And ultimately, I don't see him as risky as most flame-throwing prep pitchers simply because he has good control inherently. It's just a mechanical issue, and you can fix a mechanical issue. It'll take some time. It's going to look ugly while it does, and we saw some of that last year. He pitched in 2 games, had a 5.40 ERA because they had him working on stuff, but he still struck out. He still struck out 6 guys in 5 total innings. I mean, the stuff is there. He just mechanically has to make it sound.
And I'm okay with that because I feel like the Reds have some guys in place in their player development system that, while Kyle Bodie exited, they still have a pretty good structure in place there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with him. And I saw that trade as a little bit of a bet on them, a little bit of all right, we think we got the right people in place here. Let's test this theory out. Let's get a dude who's got a high ceiling, but he's also got a pretty low floor as well. And I think they're going to hopefully unlock that potential. When I look at the other 2 guys in the Seattle trade, Dunn and Fraley, I see a lot of people talking about Dunn as a relief pitcher, a 2-pitch relief pitcher, and I see a lot of people talking about Fraley as a 4th outfielder. The Reds have a lot of 4th outfielders already. When you look at some of the guys on the roster, Tyler Naquin, great 4th outfielder. When you look at Shogo Akiyama, he's got an upside as a 4th outfielder. When you look at Nick Senzel, he's probably a 4th outfielder. How are they going to make 4th outfielders their starting outfielders? That's going to be the question there. And with Justin Dunn, does he slot into this year's bullpen, or is this a work in progress?
Yeah, so Justin Dunn is a guy to me where I think he's had some bad luck. Maybe when you look at some of his peripherals. I mean, 6'2", 185. He has the body for what he does. Through 11 games last year, 50 innings, 49 strikeouts. So he absolutely has the tools to get guys out, but he also had 29 walks. And part of that to me feels like, okay, I know the slider's a good pitch. I know that I can, that's an out pitch. I can get strikes with that. I can't figure out the changeup. I can't figure out the curveball. I'm confident that one of those 2 pitches, the development system that you've talked about, like they can figure that out. And then part of it too with him is it's physical. So pandemic, things like that, he gained weight. It wasn't good weight, really had conditioning issues. And it's something where, I mean, I can't talk anything bad.
Potato chip weight is what you're saying.
Quarantine potato chip weight. I had it too. I can't say anything. And so I feel like you give him some time to get out of that. And maybe a trade is the thing that he needs, the wake-up call that he needs. I mean, he was a guy that made the futures game, had some great promise, lost some time with the pandemic, and has really backslid since then. And I think it's something where this wake-up call can show him, okay, I know I have a good fastball. I've got a great slider. Let me figure out this 3rd pitch. And then at worst, I'm a late innings reliever who's going up there throwing 95, striking dudes out. I'm coming in to put out a crisis in the 8th inning with 2 on and nobody out. But I still think that like you can the curveball can be better than a get me over curveball. The change is a little too firm, needs to break a little more, but has good separation from the fastball. I think it can be at least average, if not above average. There's still a chance to build him into a starter. So this is another one of those bets on your player development system. Is he going to be a starter? Is he going to be a late inning reliever? But at least you got an impact piece for your bullpen for not a lot of relative compensation.
I think the biggest challenge for him is going to be the fact that he's coming into a franchise where he is clear and away the second best Dunn to ever wear a Reds uniform, and he's going to have to do quite a bit for me to forget about the other Dunn, because I love the other Dunn. He's one of my favorite Reds of all time.
That's an underrated aspect of prospect evaluation that I don't think we pay enough attention to on my end is like, okay, but what's the history here? Like, yes, Matt Olson's coming in to play first base, and he's a great first baseman, but he's going to get compared to Freddie Freeman. So maybe, okay, you're like, Austin Riley's a great third baseman for the Braves, but he's compared to Chipper Jones. So it's not fair to him. So yeah, that's something where I don't quite know what Blake Dunn's going to do being compared to Adam Dunn. But, I don't see him as a bad outfielder. And you mentioned a lot of guys who can contend for that fourth spot. The question here is just who separates themselves, who makes themselves look like, okay, I can be a full-time starter versus being a platoon or a timeshare guy.
And kind of leading into the question that I had about Jake Fraley is that there are a lot of folks on Reds Twitter who have seen the exit velocities, and the name that is being compared to his lack of exit velocity is Jose Peraza. And when it comes to former Reds, Jose Peraza is not really held in the highest esteem. Don't get me wrong, he did some nice things. He was okay. But when you say the name Jose Peraza, you don't necessarily get filled with good feelings. When it comes to Jake Fraley, is that going to get any better?
So in the minors, he showed a little bit of like over the fence power, but like right now he needs to either get better in center field, and that's a route reaction thing, right? His speed is starting to drop a little bit. He needs to have better reaction time, better routes to the ball, or he needs to hit better. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him this year to know which one he's going to do, but I feel like he absolutely still has the potential to do one of those. And I feel better about the power than I do about the defense, simply because we saw him in the minor leagues hit some home runs. But yeah, you're right. His average exit velo, in my notes, is about 83.1. So not great. Plus runner when he first came up. Now he's about above average. His arm isn't that great, so you're looking at kind of constrained to left field, but he doesn't have the power you would want from a left fielder. So he's a guy that needs to give you something. He needs to give you more defense. He needs to give you more offense for you to be comfortable having him as an everyday guy. But again, maybe a change of scenery does him good. Maybe he's one of those guys that needs that shock of moving to a new organization.
It's going to be interesting to see, because I know that the Reds are not done. I don't need somebody in the organization to tell me that. Luis Castillo is probably on his way out. We're probably talking about maybe Tyler Mahle getting shopped. And let's be honest, and I'll have said this on on Tuesday's episode as well. Excuse me. If I were Joey Votto, I'd be waiving my no trade clause. I'm not Joey Votto, but that's what I would do.
Yeah, it's the thing that blows my mind is right now in 2022, the sixth highest paid player on the 2022 Cincinnati Reds is Ken Griffey Jr. I saw that stat and it blew my mind. And it's something where it seems like every deal has been, well, we're going to save 10 million here. We're going to save 20 million here. We're going to save 10 million here. And so, like, what is the ultimate goal here? It's the ultimate goal to win games. Is this a tank? Because if this is a tank, I don't feel like you're getting enough of the position player prospects to make it worth it if it's a tank. And so, like, what is the goal with all of these trades out of the system?
Well, and Lindsay, I'm going to end on this. The Reds and the Mariners both fancy themselves playoff contenders, or at least most people who do baseball prognostication fancy both teams as potential postseason candidates a couple of weeks ago. both teams made a trade with each other, one of them completely ignoring the fact that they're a postseason contender. However, reports from the MLB.com reporter of the Cincinnati Reds, Mark Sheldon, say that Nick Krall is going to be active in contacting free agents. I
got nothing.
I got nothing.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Lindsay. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for coming on. If folks want more info on the Reds and want to follow your team and your show, how can they do that?
You can follow us at Locked On Reds on Twitter and Instagram. You can also follow myself at Jeff Carr right down there with 3 F's and 2 R's. You can follow my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker, at S. Offenbaker. And we are everywhere podcasts are sold, including YouTube. Right here.
And for Locked On Reds listeners, I am at Crosby Baseball. My show is on Twitter at Locked On Farm. And if you have questions about Reds prospects, because I feel like that's going to kind of be your thing this year, send those to lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com. We do mailbags at least every other Monday. You can check them out on YouTube. They're tons of fun. Jeff, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for bringing on the existential ennui to a short segment on some trades. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you plenty this season.
Appreciate you, Lindsay, and thanks for joining us.